Oh. All right, you guys got to hear this. This is so funny. All right, one sec. One sec. Oh my goodness. Oh, let me let Pablo. Oh. All right, hopefully y'all can hear this.
Sure, Cap. Butters, can't you see this is wrong? You've got little boys all over school spending all their lunch money on kisses. Boys shouldn't be paying for kisses. It's wrong. Cal, every boy pays for kisses. Do you know what I am saying? If you got a girl and she kisses you, sooner or later you're paying for it. You got to take her out to lunch, take her to a movie, and then spend time listening to all her stupid problems. Look at Stan right there. He's got to sit there and listen to her stupid motherfucking problems because she kisses him. Yes, me. That's a lot more than the $5 my company charges. What's happened to you? What happened is I became a man. I'm sorry I'm not your little buddy anymore, but there's a time people have to...
Oh my goodness, dude. I didn't realize, I forgot that Butters cusses there. Sorry about that. Oh, man. You pay for kisses because you got to listen to all their stupid problems. I can't stand up. Oh, dude, if you know like South Park, man. Oh, man. Because Butters is Butters such a sweet little guy. And then Butters becomes a pimp. And these black guys go, you know what I'm saying? And Butters says, do you know what I am saying? And they go, yeah, me what I'm saying. He goes, do you know what I'm saying? Oh, my goodness. That's one of the best episodes ever of any show ever was when Butters becomes a pimp. Oh, man. Oh, God bless Butters, dude. You ever watch any of the dudes from how they came up with Butters and whatnot, and the guy who does Butters? That's the thing about the algorithm. Once you click on one thing, they send you all this stuff like all my algorithms filled with South Park things, Leslie Nielsen from Naked Gun, a lot of baseball stuff. What's the name? Family Guy. And then that's pretty much it. That's on Facebook. On Twitter. I don't did they even have shorts on Twitter? I don't know. Oh my goodness. Anyway, what's going on, everybody? We got Brian in the house. Pulverizer's here. K Paso. Watch Inside China Business channel on YouTube for great analysis of why China's kicking. Ooh, all right. I have to check that out. Inside China. Inside China Business. I think South Park does too. Shitty Walk is a place called City Walk. Is oh my goodness. So you got a Chinese guy who owns. Did you get Andrew's? I have not got it yet. No, I haven't. Brian, did you? I haven't got it yet. I will. Shitty Walk. Oh my goodness. All right, let me look up China. Inside China Business and inside China. Right there. I have to check that out. Oh yeah, dude, that Chinese factories build fire trucks for 400,000 in 6 weeks. Yes, that's not good. In fact, I just looked up because they had this meme on Facebook about the steel industry and who's producing the most steel and all that. And then I looked up Grok because Grok never lies. In 2024, China produced approximately 1 billion metric tons of crude steel, while the U.S. produced 81 million metric tons. China produced 1 billion metric tons of crude steel, while the U.S. produced 81 million. This means China's steel production. Maybe South Park has a negotiation video with China. Maybe that's what you started with. Oh man, yeah, maybe. This means China's steel production was roughly 12.4 times that of the U.S., accounting for over 50% of the global output. U.S. is 4.3%. I did a video the other day. I don't think many people watched it. Maybe I can't remember. But, dude, this is – and then some freaking fool said, like I was talking about large power transformers. And this fool said, oh, large power transformers are easy to make. I said, like, why these anti-Trumpers just lie? I'm like, I'm literally watched the industry, the Virginia Transformer. I can't remember the name of the company, but Virginia Transformer. You can look at them on YouTube. I literally watched what they said. They say there's over a 2-year lead time. This is why it's the weirdest thing. People just they. Oh, here goes Bobby's. People have so much Trump hate. They would rather pretend that things don't exist when they do. It's the look. Do some people on the right do that too? Absolutely, absolutely. I hate that crap too, man. Yeah, it used to be U.S. was the largest steel producer in the world by far. Japan was a close second. And the crazy thing is the UK, where Bessemer is from, they don't produce anything anymore. It's insanity. I mean, anyways, in this way, so you tell these people these are factual issues. Biden, to his credit, the CHIPS Act, I like. I'm sure there's a bunch of stupid stuff in there, but still, I like the CHIPS Act. Trying to get more semiconductors over here. Reagan put 100% tariff on Japanese semiconductors. My mom even texted me the other day, so, you like tariffs, you should listen to what Reagan said. I said, yeah, I do like tariffs. Reagan put 100% semiconductor import tax on Japanese semiconductors to protect American industry. Reagan did. Everyone's favorite conservative Republican. And it's just a weird, I'm like, if transfers are so easy to make, why would the people in the business say there's over a 2-year lead time? Why would the Department of Energy write white papers that say there's a 2-year lead time? It's just idiot. It's so stupid. I mean, this is why we're going to read this article by Thomas D. Lorenzo, who I like, about tariffs. I'm just like, you're just wrong, dude. You're just wrong about the past. Buddy, yeah, all right. Just keep going. I'm just like, it's the weirdest thing. But the reliance on China, a communistic country, for our steel, our pharmaceuticals, it's blindingly obvious that's a problem. You don't have to be a Trumpster to realize that this is not good. If we don't make our own steel, electrical steel, for these large power transformers, we are in a world of hurt. And just to say, oh, transformers are easy to make, I'm like, why did you say that? This is just a weird. I don't understand, man. It's just this, it's just weird. I mean, why would you say something that's blindingly like? Well, where was I don't know if he's on here, but I just don't want to say it. There's another guy. I'm like, just not. You're wrong. I mean, you're unequivocally, absolutely wrong, and yet you guys act like you're all right. It's just strange to me. Right wingers do it all the time too. I'm not saying this is just a left wing issue. Generally speaking, though, right wingers. We're not aligned as much with politics as the left is, because the left has no. I mean, they're basically the left are soulless people, man. What the hell is that? You know what I'm saying? A lot of the left are just soulless. The timid always fear the dogged. China needs to be corrected by any 100%, man. I'm going to agree more, Scott. And Christianity gets this freaking act together too. By the way, I mean that's another thing too. Is that's really. We're practicing. Some guy on Twitter banned me or blocked me, whatever it was, because I said, dude, we need to get a little bit more Pinochet, Mussolini in here, man. We need to get less of this freaking pussyfoot stuff, a little bit more Mussolini, Pinochet. Start sending these illegals out the house, freaking string them up or send them out. If a guy has an MS-13 tattoo on his knuckles and the senator from Maryland is like basically kissing his butt, the guy needs to be swinging, man. That guy, the MS-13 guy, you come in here, you got to go. And if you're not going, we're going to let you. You're going to be swinging. That's all there is to it. Oh, but and this guy was like, "Well, Christianity, don't you know Jesus was a refugee?" I'm like, oh my goodness, it's crazy. Christianity isn't big on tolerance. It should not be, as we can see by Jesus, for sure. We're not big on tolerance, and we so fell for the freaking fake. Oh, Jesus was a hippie, man. Just love. It's all good. Just love. It's such a freaking. Yeah, well, the Supreme Court said they can stay. Yeah, I think they did, right? I think they said Trump can't use the 1892 War Act, or whatever the hell it is, to ban them. But this is a very evil channel. All right, let me leave. It's evil because I want MS-13 members to get the hell out of Dodge. Okay. Get the hell out of here, dude. It's funny. Senator Van Hollen, or what the hell his name is, did not talk to the lady who lost her daughter from an illegal immigrant. I just find that very, very. In fact, the guy from what's his name? Kunstner, I think his name, Kunstler, or something like that, from LouRockwell.com. He just posted, I think what's his name? Jared or Jacob Kunstler, evil channel. Okay, I'm so evil that we don't want friggin' illegal immigrants in here, MS-13. I love the coward center. Anyway, so this guy said, what's his name? Kilmar. He said, Kilmar for president. Kilmar for president is funny because he goes, if you look at the Democrats, who else they got? Pete Buttigieg? You might as well go all full throttle and make Kilmar your presidential nominee. I thought it was pretty funny. Kevin loves the coward center. Exactly. Yeah, man. That guy's fantastic. I am evil Homer. I am evil Homer. I am evil Glenn, 100%. Let's say prayers because tomorrow is Easter. So, dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for giving us Jesus. We thank you for giving him the strength in order to deal with the crucifixion that happened yesterday. And on the third day, he rose again in fulfillment of the scriptures. We just thank you for what you've done, the power you gave Jesus to come back from the dead, the power you gave Jesus to recognize the plight he was going to go through, the pain, the agony, the suffering, being left alone from his followers. And yet he still did it for people who hate him. He still did it for people who hate him. It's the story of the world. It's the most important story of the world. And we just pray for the strength to continue to recognize Jesus' sacrifice and how much you, God, gave us Jesus to do that. And not to shy away from it and to take the battle, to be on the offensive, to promote the Jesus, what he went through, to promote Christianity and God as the one true God of all things. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. I don't think these guys who say, oh, you should just sit back and take it. Like, man, whoever was in Vienna, I can't remember if the Dutch or whoever came to the rescue of the in Vienna, they should just take it back. Let the Moors take them over. In fact, I was just reading today or yesterday. They came up. They found some temple and basically some old Mexican temple or something like that. Scott, I disagree on tariffs, but Josh, well, because you're wrong on tariffs, Kirk. How dare you? Kirk's being banned. How dare you disagree? Anyway, they found some temple in Mexico. You know, this is before Mexico was like Spanish, the conquistadors, whatnot. And they had obviously a child sacrifice routine because they had dead children bones on, the altar of the temple or something like that. And it's just evil. This is where I don't understand why, frankly, I think it's because we took on this idea of Judeo-Christianity. I think that's where it all started. So we took on this auspices of Judeo-Christianity, and we're just like, we're just hippies. We want to be in love and be loved and blah, blah, blah. It's just wrong. It's morally bankrupt. It's wrong. Christianity stands alone. We're not partnering with Jews or Muslims. We are our own unique religion. And we should recognize that, man. And and the Hindus and whatnot would know. No, that doesn't mean we hate them. Doesn't mean we go punch them in the face. It just means no. And we got to protect the walls of Christianity. And for some reason, we are so scared of our own shadow that we just don't do it. It's sad because have Christians done a lot of crap, of course. But Christianity is the only religion that got rid of slavery, man. We got rid of slavery, Christians, because we recognize how evil slavery was. It's just a fact. We're the only countries that got rid of child sacrifice. And we went and we enforced our religion on people who were freaking inferior. It's just, I don't think Kirk supports illegal immigration. I don't know that to be true, Thomas. I've never heard Kirk say he supports illegal immigration. I mean, at least here. I mean, anyway, so at some point, Christians are going to have to stand up and say, no, we've had enough of this. And that means mass deportations to protect Christianity. They're building this big Hindu temple in India. And that actually doesn't bother me so much. If that's on private property, I don't care. But at some point, Christians got to say, no. We've gone too far here. And I wonder if we're going to be able to do that. Now, remember, in England, was it Austria? I think I said this. I read this the other day. In Austria, 40%, 40% of Austrian school-age children are Muslim. 40% of, this is Austria. 40% of Austrian school-age children are Muslim. Now, I didn't verify that. I just saw it by people I trust, so it might not be true. But it's like, if that's true, I couldn't believe it. I said 40% of school-age children are Muslims in Austria. We're being colonized, man. It's just a fact. And to sit there and say, well, Jesus would have had it because he was a refugee too, I agree. Europe is doomed. It's crazy. I don't see any difference in Mayans, human sacrifice, and the loons run the U.S. government senseless starved millions of innocents for what? So the sun would rise the next day. I don't get it. So the sun would rise the next day. I don't understand what you're saying. But, I mean, I hear what you're saying. You're comparing our endless wars. Yeah, I completely agree with that. It wasn't the Mayans. It's something else. It's not it's like the Wakakins. I don't know what it's called. It wasn't the Mayans though. And I can't remember where I found that article. It's very interesting actually. But yeah, I mean, I agree. We shouldn't be freaking bombing. We shouldn't be on the offense to freaking do what we've done. Absolutely. This country is falling, and we are looking to be doomed too. 100%, man. I mean, it's all there is to it. The facts are, we don't make any steel relative to what China's doing. The facts are we don't have any industry relative to what China's doing, and is bad. Last April, I spent a full day touring around Vienna. I don't remember seeing any Muslims. Oh, all right. I'm repeating back that 40% of school-age children in Austria were Muslim. So just because there is a thing called Potemkin villages there, by the way, Scott. So just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Unfortunately, what's going on in Palestine is genocide. Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's horrible, horrific, and I don't like these Republicans who are saying nuke them. Scott's like, I didn't see it. They were all in school. Scott's like, I didn't see it, so it can't be. Okay. Because I didn't see it, it's not true, because I was in Vienna. It's just... Oh my god, they're all. I don't know. I mean, my goodness, the idea that okay, so let's say Scott's right. In Vienna, he ran around. There's no Muslims, so that proves that there is no Muslim issue. Okay, there is a Muslim issue, 100% for one day, right? Exactly for one day. I went around Philadelphia one day, and there's no blacks. So there's no blacks in Philadelphia. I mean, think about how insane that is. Like, I went around. Well, where did you go? I was in my office building in Center City. So I didn't see any blacks because in my office. So Philadelphia doesn't have blacks apparently. Yeah, silly. All right. So anyway, so Easter's tomorrow. A good time to reflect. If you walk through Dearborn, Michigan, you would think, well, actually in Philadelphia, I remember when I first went to Philly, I was like stunned because no, you're not stating a fact, dude. Your fact is your observation. That isn't inherently a fact. I mean, it is a fact. You did not see any Muslims that you are aware of. That is a fact. To then extrapolate that to say that immigration and you were in Vienna for one day. Come on, man, Scott, you're not that dumb. So to sit there and extrapolate that to saying that immigration must have happened fast, i.e., whatever you're saying, Josh, is incorrect because I was in Vienna for one day and I didn't see any Muslims. And again, you don't know because do you know what a Muslim is? Can you point out a Muslim? Can you point out, oh, that guy's Muslim, that guy's Muslim? Can you point him out? Profiling much there, Scott? So there's a fact. You went there, and for you did not see what you think were Muslims. That is true. I don't have any issue with that at all. 100%. To extrapolate that though, and then say, thus, your argument is wrong. Several sources confirm my 40% statement. Crazy fact. What you're doing inherently is that's a speculation on your part. That's a speculation on your part. And as such, that's not a fact. That's speculation. 95% of my customers are Muslim, but I get your point. Muslim isn't a race. I'm a Christian. Muslims have proven over and over to dominate where they go to. This isn't, I don't, would anybody be shocked by this? I don't think so. Does that mean you hate Muslims? No. I can still live. Does that mean I want to live next to Muslims? No, not necessarily. But you don't hate them. You don't punch in the face. Can you get along with them? Absolutely. But at some point, a Christian country is going to have to say, we are losing our Christianity and we want to maintain that Christianity, because as if this group of people who comes here, as witnessed by everywhere else they go, there will not be a Christianity very long in terms that's freely recognizable. It's not. It won't be. And if we just, this is no different than the communists. Just listen to their words, dudes. Listen to what they say. You can argue all day long that the Muslims are great, like 100%. Christians, though, should say, that's great. You're still going to be a major, a minority within our country. And we're not going to allow your way of viewpoint to take over what is a Christian nation. We're just not going to do that. But for so long, Christians have been so scared of their own shadow. They're like, oh, I don't want to offend these people. I don't want to be called racist. Being called racist is like the worst possible thing in the world for left wing. And I hate to say it used to be right wingers too for a long time. Right wing, you coming? Right wingers start to wake up. They don't care. Some guy called me a Klansman today. I said, I don't care. Whatever, dude. And it's stupid. The guy, what I said. So my man, this black guy following Twitter, he posted something about the Carmelo Anthony, whatever that white kid's name was, thing, not to make a racial thing. I said, I agree with that. It's the Carmelo Anthony side that did, though. And this guy said, oh, you must be a Klan. He basically said, hey, Josh, I can't remember. He posted something about the Klan. And I was like, oh, you called me a Klansman. Oh, my goodness. Never heard that before. I'm a Klansman. Come on. I said, I can't be a Klansman. My best friend's black. Dude, if you ever get called a bad thing by a black guy, just say, no, I can't be. My best friend's black. Right? Because it's funny. Because whites used to do this all the time in the 80s. I'm not racist. My best friend's black, and they'd say some kind of racist. And so now that we're in the 2025s, if black guy ever says you're racist, no, my best friend's black, I'm not racist. And then it just those because you're doing what the blacks have done with the N-word and the gays have done with queer, is you're turning that back on them. It's funny, man. I just tell them I also have a color TV. That's funny. According to Bing, Muslim students now account for 41% of all students in Vienna, while Christian students. But Scott's never seen a Muslim in Vienna. He was there for a whole day. Why is that president of El Salvador letting these gang members have visitors from? I love it, man. I think it's great. I think, let them come in. I love what that guy's doing. Let these idiot senators come down there and show that these guys are living large. The guy should be swinging, without question. If you come here illegally and you're an MS-13 member, you need to swing. That's all. We got to look. I was for a while as anti-death penalty. I was. And you notice, though, because there is no death penalty, we got more and more people being more and more brutal in terms of what they think they can get away with. I don't think the family bought a new house. Yeah, because President Bekele, whatever his name, likes to troll. Yeah, he's a perfect. Hey, Chris, you're on this, not on LinkedIn. Look, am I not on LinkedIn? Yeah, look at my man Christopher's on. Aren't you normally on LinkedIn? I don't think they bought a new house, Kirk. I think they did buy a new car, but I think they're renting like a $900,000 house or something like that. All right, Scott. So what do you say about what the numbers say, man? Scott, you gonna apologize for your crazy talk, or are you just kind of going out and saying, I don't want to be told? You gonna see? So we have evidence here from Christopher. According to Bing, Muslim students now account for 41.2% of all students in Vienna, while Christian students fell to 34.5%. Muslims in Austria form nearly 9% of the population. Yeah, so that's a challenge. That's a challenge. I mean, the funny thing is, when you read, no, I guess Scott from Texas. I don't think he's liberal, though. Scott's from Texas, been around here before. I don't think he's a big lib. Yeah, it's just sort of clear this up. So, where did Bing go to college? I don't think Scott is from Texas, big lib. But just look it up. Prove me wrong, Scott from Texas. Prove me wrong, dude. It's okay. Say, nah, dude, I looked up this website. I looked up the Washington Post and or I looked up Snopes and they're saying you're wrong, Scanlon. Prosperity gospel is horrible. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Christianity has too many prosperity God. Yeah, it's such a clown show. Mike Williamson says Austin. That's where Bing went to college, Austin. What that we just talked about. Our guy from El Salvador. The El Salvador president makes his country the safest place in the world, formerly the most dangerous. Yeah, that guy's crushing. Absolutely. That's why we need to get a little bit of that Mussolini action in here, Pinochet in here, man. Everyone's like saying Trump's a fascist because he sent this guy to freaking El Salvador. I'm like, dude, I want more fascism. That's not nearly enough. I want more. Oh, that's what I'm saying. Just read what the communists say. If you read what the communists say, they literally. I went to college in Austin. All right. Well, Scott, prove me wrong, dude. You're the one making the claim. You're like, I never saw any Muslim in Vienna when I was there. And then Scott also says 95% of his clients are Muslim. Oh, boy. And remember, Vienna, if memory serves, was where Christianity was like, who was it? Victor Davis Hanson, I think, had written about this. Was it him? Someone about the fight to win. I think it was Vienna. Maybe it was Vienna. I think it was Vienna, where the Muslim hordes are finally kicked back. Anyway, the communists told the same thing. They said, this is what we're going to do. And we didn't take them seriously until Reagan came along. And then finally, when Reagan came along, wasn't Pinochet rounding up the kids living on the streets and executing them? Probably. Well, look, you take some of the good. Just because he did bad things doesn't mean you have to take the bad things. But he secured Chile, right? From Allende, or was it Allende, what the hell his name was? Was it? No, he was Argentine. Who was the guy before Pinochet? But he certainly secured Chile, Pinochet. So yeah, just because he was doing bad things doesn't mean, we got to do that. It's not pulverizer. It's not all or nothing. You say, hey, let's get a little bit of fascism over here. You know what I'm saying? Let's bring it on here. Make sure that people freaking mind their P's and Q's when it comes to coming to America. And if you come to America and do bad things, we're going to round you up and we're going to send you, or we're going to do bad things. That's just all there is to it. And then watch how quickly this stops. It's amazing how quickly this stops. And that's why I was hoping Trump, that guy from El Salvador, Kilmar for president, would have been in a real bad facility. So we could say, hey, Marcus, we could say, hey, don't be messing around with the Trumps or else that will be you next. Don't forget. Okay. Well, if all the laws is written, that'd be a great first step. But we need to start getting some fear into people for sure. And look, man, after COVID, everything changed. It was like, oh, don't you care about the Constitution? But no one cared about the Constitution under COVID. So at some point, the pendulum on the right has got to swing back, and it hasn't swung back nearly far enough. Because COVID, BLM, COVID, Me Too, all that crap, is that it went way too far. We got everything violated, and as such, it's time to come back hard on the right, so that way when it swings back in the middle, we'll at least have had some chance to friggin' get our side of the story told and rectify some of the bad things that happen. I find it very interesting. Some guy posted today, 15 million illegals come in based all at once. No one secures them. No one looks at them. No one does anything. Trump wants to get rid of 15 million illegals that the Biden administration allowed in, but he's got to go one by one. But no Supreme Court ever said, Biden, you can't allow this to happen. 15 million illegal immigrants came in here just without any kind of, no one has documented nothing. You know what I'm saying? We weren't saying who they were. They just came on in. 15 million hordes of illegal immigrants. But Trump wants to get rid of them. You got to be one by one. This freaking thing is stupid. And remember, Trump put Amy Coney Barrett in there. You know what I'm saying? And it's just Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, man. I tell you. The Supreme Court is temporarily stopping the deportations. Yeah, I haven't seen what look, at the end of the day, they're just saying you can't use the law of 1812 to do it. Okay, that's fine. But will they continue doing that? I don't know. But they're also taking up birthright citizenship. And I know for a fact, Justice Roberts will be on he'll rule against Trump on birthright citizenship because he adopted 2 children from Ireland. And that's very suspicious. The reason they got Roberts up because the way he adopted these children is under very suspicious measurements. You're like, was there any kind of, I won't say it here, but was any kind of thing? Comey Barrett was a disastrous pick. It's crazy. I support her like crazy. It's nuts to me, man. It's nuts how bad she's been. It's crazy. I thought, but anyway, but I think she's going to be on the line of anti-Trump here too for birthright citizenship. The Catholic, there is something about being Catholic guilt, and some of the Catholic guilt, and she went to Notre Dame. I think she's Catholic, but dude, you can't listen to Federalist Society anymore when it comes to their choices here. There's a Federalist Society for a lot of people. Just you can't. We've had too many Roberts. Amy, you can't, man. Amy anonymously called her out. She was pro 100%. Dude. I mean, she sucked during the COVID stuff, and it's just like I mean, you never notice the Democrats always are in lockstep. It's always the Republicans that change. It's always, man. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the Catholic guilt, the Catholic liberation theology that she's been trained, I guarantee she's going to rule against Trump on the protection of being a citizen with birthright citizenship. Yep, Catholic guilt is real, 100%, man. 100%. It was crazy. It's just always like that. The Democrats are always lockstep. It's like they got something on these people. It's the craziest thing. Yeah, I'll never. Anyway. All right, so let's read this article by Thomas DiLorenzo on tariffs. We're going to see if we can't convince old Kirk here, who doesn't believe in tariffs. We're going to show him why he's wrong, and why when we're done here, we're going to show him. Oh, dude, Catholic Charities, freaking, just all these guys. The Catholic, it's just sickening. It's absolutely sickening. All right, so the tariff tax statistic the Trump fanboys don't want you to know. Now, Thomas DiLorenzo, I'm a fan of. All right, now he was Rush Limbaugh's economist that he would call on occasion. When Walter Williams was sub for Rush on occasion, Rush would have Thomas Sowell on there on occasion, but on occasion he'd bring Thomas DiLorenzo to talk economic stuff. And I was just stunned reading this. This is from the Mises.org, the Mises Institute down there in Auburn, Alabama. And I was just disappointed is not the right word. It's not strong enough. I was like, come on, man. I mean, this is a well-known libertarian economist, and I was like, you're just wrong. Oh, but you don't have a PhD, Josh. Yeah, you're right. You don't have to have a PhD. I'm not Douglas Murray, the expert. I've been following this stupid thing with Douglas Murray, that clown. He doesn't have a PhD, but he calls himself as an expert. I'm not even holding myself as an expert, but I do know how to read. I do know how to research. I don't give a crap you got a PhD. Just because you have a PhD doesn't mean you have more freaking expertise than anybody else. It's nuts. Anyway, so this is so I'm a Trump fanboy. And so I said, I want to learn the tariff tax statistic that Trump fanboys, of which I am, don't want you to know about. I wanted to learn that. So you got Fox commentator Charles Payne recently repeated Pat Buchanan's old post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy. After this, therefore, because of this. Why don't you just say that? So we got to say old post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy. And then he tells us what it is. After this, therefore, because of this. About a tariffs and a Breitbart column. The fallacy goes like this. Economic growth occurred during the post-Civil War period up to the turn of the century. High protectionist tariffs were imposed during the Lincoln regime and lasted for some 50 years. Therefore, the protectionist tariffs caused the economic growth. All right, so that's a correlation. Can you say the correlation led to the causation? I wouldn't make that claim. But you can still say at the end of the day, the tariffs were imported or input, I mean, not just under Lincoln, but heavily in the 1890s. And there was massive economic growth from 1897 and beyond. Thus, can we say tariffs did that? No, I would say about 1897 tariffs. Yes, and I'll get in that here in a second. But I would not go on the record saying because tariffs, thus this. I would never say that. But you cannot then turn around and say because tariffs, the economy went south or massive inflation. You can't have it both ways, which the anti-tariff people want to do. They say tariffs lead to inflation. Okay, what happens when tariffs don't lead to inflation? Tariffs lead to bad economic growth. Oh, Gotcha. Okay, so they lead to inflation if there is inflation after tariffs because of tariffs. If there's no inflation after tariffs, it's because tariffs led to bad economic growth. That's heads I win, tails you lose. All right, let's keep going here. And his analogy is the rooster crows in the morning, then the sun comes up. Therefore, the rooster crowing causes the sun to come up. That was pretty silly. Let's keep going here. It was the absence of income taxation and a hardly noticeable regulatory regime that was the most important policy issues related to the post-Civil War growth, along with the existence of the gold standard in various forms. All right, so what he's saying is the absence of an income tax and a hardly noticeable regulatory regime that led to the most Civil War growth. So he's acknowledging there is post-Civil War growth, first and foremost. Thomas DiLorenzo, are you not at all familiar with the panics of 1893 to 1897 and the 1870s as well? And there was a little bit in the 1880s as well. So post-Civil War growth was hit or miss, man, there, guy. So if tariffs did not cause the economic growth, we had massive deflation, massive depressions in 1870s and 1890s, and a little bit in the 1880s as well. So if tariffs did not cause the growth that occurred in the 1880s by and large, and then in the latter part of the 1890s, you certainly cannot say that it was a lack of income tax and lack of regulatory stature, because they're these two things. You can easily say the lack of an income tax caused the economic despondence of the 1870s and the depression of the 1890s. You can't. But the fact that he doesn't know, he's just saying explicitly that there is post-Civil War economic growth. And I don't know what Charles Payne wrote in the Breitbart, because I don't care. I just care about what freaking Thomas DiLorenzo is saying here. And I'm like, how do I go back to it? Hold on a second. I got to share my screen again. What's going on here? Blink. I got to share. Oh, share screen. There we go. All right, let's keep going back. It's just idiotic, dude. All right. So anyway, so tariffs on imports could not possibly have been the one cause of post-war prosperity. In addition, many of the tariffs are imposed on imports in the manufacturing process by American corporations, hindering economic growth. All right, so now he's saying there was economic growth, but the tariffs actually hurt it. The unseen, because I took a left. If I would have taken the right, I would be a multi-billionaire right now. But because I turned left, I'm not a multi-billionaire. Thus, I should have gone to the right. Same thing here. Because there were tariffs, which even though we had massive economic growth post-Civil War, according to Thomas DiLorenzo, which I just showed you we did not, but tariffs actually hurt that economic growth that existed in spite of tariffs, is what he's saying. The period of protectionist tariff plunder was especially harmful to American farmers because a tax on imports eventually became a de facto tax on exports, and farmers exported huge amounts of their produce. So I just can't believe Thomas DiLorenzo wrote this, because farmers exported huge amounts. So he's using the word huge, not small, not medium sized, huge amount. They exported huge amounts of their produce. This is because impoverishing American trading partners by blocking them from selling here results in the fact they have fewer dollars with which to buy American goods. At the time, that was overwhelmingly American farm produce. All right. Tariff taxes also reduced the disposable income of the American working class during that time, as all taxation does. Okay, so I want to talk about, because we're going to get in that here in just a second, but they said right here, the mass farmers exported huge amounts of produce. All right, let's take a look here. I want to point out something here, because he says, where the hell did he say this, man? Where does he say this? Because he says in here, right here, international trade was a small fraction of the entire economy. Interesting. But then he turns around literally in the same paragraph and says, farmers exported huge amounts of their produce. So what is it? Is international trade a small amount of the American economy? Is farmers exporting huge amounts of their produce small? And then he also says agriculture was the biggest employment, essentially, the biggest thing that we had. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say we didn't have high international trade if then you're going to turn around and say farmers exported huge amounts of their produce, and you can't turn around and say on the same time that agriculture was our biggest export. You can't do that. And on top of that, we know from Brad DeLong, who did a study on this, and I don't like Brad DeLong very much, but he said, he didn't say this explicitly, but if you put 2 and 2 together in his study on this, you saw that the amount of international trade relative to GDP in the 1870s, 80s, and 90s was roughly the same as it's been throughout. Roughly the same. All right. So Thomas DiLorenzo was just wrong. All right. Now we can look at, I'd like to see Thomas DiLorenzo have a study, cite a study, that international trade was much lower in the 1870s, 80s, and 90s than what it was after that. I'd like to see it. Brad DeLong, who's a big anti-tariff guy himself, said otherwise in his white paper, talked about this. And it's just wrong. And it's just, we can even see, we can read other books right here, Charles Hoffman and whatnot, the Great Depression in the 1890s. It's just not true. International trade was still big in the 1870s, 80s, 90s, just as much as it was later on when tariffs were reduced. It's just a fact. It's idiotic to say otherwise. Now, in 1890, international trade from Britain declined. Because of tariff? No, because Britain and Europe as a whole were going into a depression before that. The European was going into a massive depression before 1890. The reason I say 1890 is because that was when the McKinley Tariff Act came in. The McKinley Tariff Act was big, but Britain and the European countries were already in a significant depression before that. Had nothing to do with our tariffs, by the way. Had nothing to do with our tariffs. All right. And just FYI, it took until 1893 for the American Depression to happen. And then he goes into here, which is crazy to me, because he talks about a gold standard. Where does he say? Right here. The existence of the gold standard. He says post-Civil War growth along with the existence of the gold standard. What caused the massive depression in the U.S. in the 1893? Anyone want to take a guess? Because farmers, who he talks about here that were getting killed, farmers wanted to inflate the currency because of the mass deflation. We had massive deflation, had nothing to do with tariffs. And farmers said, hey, we should make silver a bimetal currency. There was a Sherman Silver Act that came out in, I don't remember, 1890 or something like that. And people thought the United States was going off the gold standard. And as such, foreigners were pulling their gold like white on rice. So what happened was we had to go to the Rothschilds to get backing because our gold standard was falling apart at the seams. There's something called the Belmont-Morgan Pact. And we incorporated the House of Rothschild, of all things, to get the loans to maintain our gold standard. The farmers didn't want a gold standard. They wanted inflation. They wanted an income tax, right? Because they say, hey, the tariffs, that's hurting us, 100%. But they wanted an income tax, so there'd be no tariffs. But either way, they wanted to have the currency appreciate, or in this case, depreciate, if you will. The currency depreciate so things would be cheaper. They wanted inflation because they were dealing with mass deflation. And as such, they wanted silver to be another currency. The Sherman Silver Act. The gold standard was falling apart. We had to go not once, not twice, but thrice for loans to the capital markets for the gold standard to maintain itself. How does Thomas? He's from the Mises Institute, man. The gold standard proponents. That's crazy to me. I'm like, did the tariffs actually hurt the farmers? Yeah, we can make an argument for that. I get it. But that's not what hurt the farmers, dude. The foreign markets are falling apart at the seams. They're in a massive depression well before the McKinley Tariff Act. Well before that. Such so, the mass deflation that was happening, the farmers said, no, we need to inflate the currency. How are we going to do that? We need a bimetal silver. Not bimetal, but a bimetal, like two. I'm just sitting there just in disgust of this crazy talk. It's crazy to me. Furthermore, if what these two cheerleaders for the quintessentially anti-populist policy of protectionist plunder of average Americans were true, there have been hardly any economic growth at all from the end of World War II until today, when the average, I can't believe this guy's saying this, when the average tariff rate declined for 78 years from about 11% in 2005 to 2.5%. All right, so he's saying, if these two cheerleaders for the quintessentially anti-populist policy of protectionist plunder, come on, man, just pop, spitting all over myself, were true, that tariffs lead to growth, there should have been hardly any economic growth in the end of World War II until today, when the average tariff rate would decline for 78 years. I'm sitting there thinking, does Thomas DiLorenzo not know what the growth has been since 1970s? The GDP hasn't grown much. Basically, since Reagan came in, we've had a significant decline in GDP. Why? Because we went full throttle free trade. And what happened to the UK? The UK was the predominant economy of the world. They continued to be free trade. Obviously, they were not free trade when they had their manufacturing, all this. But then they went free trade in the 1880s, 1890s, and then they just collapsed as one of the dominant economies. Well, they're still they were dominant for a while, but they're not like the U.S. The U.S. became the dominant economy of the world, supplanting the British because, or we should say during, the tariffs of 1897, the Dingley Tariff Act. These cannot be argued. This is not an argument. You cannot make the argument that tariffs hurt the economy and no tariffs helped, when the GDP under this low tariff economy over the last 40 years has been going down and down and down. Now, one thing you can make, I don't have the book here. I bought another book on population growth by this guy, Easterlin, is an economist. I'm looking forward to reading that. He wrote that in like 1975. You could make an argument that population growth is what stimulates economic growth. But then you have to say, well, that's not what happened in the 1920s. We stopped immigration in the 1920s, literally no immigration, and we had massive growth in the 1920s. So you can make that argument, and it sounds somewhat seductive, but then you have to say what happened, the mass immigration that we had in the 1890s, and there was no growth. And then the reduction of immigration in the 1920s, and there was growth. You just can't, again, you can't say that freaking, I took a shower today, the sun rose from the east, thus I take a shower, makes the sun rose from the east. The UK was finished after World War. We were already taken over, man. We were already taken over. And in 1900s, we became the dominant economy without question. And so what this guy said, and I don't even need to ask. I said, well, Thomas DiLorenzo, how would you deal with our lack of steel making? Are you okay with China controlling over 50% of the world's steel? China is self-sufficient in their ability to make large power transformers and everything else they need to. We are not. We rely on our economic enemies, if not military enemies. Are you okay with that? That'd be like saying, are you okay with Stalin in charge of giving us tires for our Humvees? Are you okay with that? Are you okay with Stalin giving us the transmission wires to freaking have electricity in the Rural Electrical Act? I guess that was during Stalin. It doesn't matter. You can use any analogy you want. Are you okay with Stalin holding us by the kahunas for what we need for an advancing, growing economy? Because that's what's happening with China. And this is no joke anymore. These anti-tariff people, they're making crap up. I just want to show you something else here. And it just freaking pisses me off. Because I'm like, why? Either they're ignorant means they don't know, or they're a lie by omission. I don't know how it is. I don't know which one they are. I cannot imagine a guy like Thomas DiLorenzo is ignorant of tariffs. And the reason I can't is because he posts this right here. The average American tariff rate from 1890, right here. So we got 1890. This is tariffs were high to protect U.S. industry and raise federal revenue, especially on the McKinley tariff of 1890, before income tax existed. Yeah. So we had an average tariff rate of 30% under McKinley. Watch what happens now. Here's the Dingley tariff right here, 1897. I don't know why he doesn't. This is the big one, because the Dingley tariff is really when we start freaking kicking ass and taking names. All right, so Dingley is when we really took off because we got post-economic malaise from 1893 to 1897. Then we just took off like a freaking rocket. Watch what happens, though. Because we got the income tax, we started dropping tariffs like a brick in water. So now we're down here. What is this? Oh, that's the Fordney tariff of 1922. I think, yeah, right here. 1922, Fordney-McCumber Act raised tariffs to protect farmers and manufacturers. Look at that. The Fordney tariff, 1922. What happened to growth in the post-Fordney Tariff Act in the 1920s? It went off like crazy. By the way, we had a massive depression in the 1920 and 21, by the way, that Calvin Coolidge just basically said, we're not going to do anything. We're going to let it work itself out. All right, we had low tariffs here before Fordney, and we had a massive depression. The Democrats actually took over in 1892 or 94, and they reduced tariffs, and we had a depression too. Would I say tariffs caused a depression or reduction of tariffs caused a depression? No. I would say at the end of the day, we had massive growth after Dingley. We had massive growth after Fordney. All right. We had a depression when we had lower tariffs in the 1890s and a depression in the post-World War I era with lower tariffs. Now, you could turn around and say, yeah, but Smoot-Hawley, we had a depression after Smoot-Hawley. Okay. Yeah, right on. Did Smoot-Hawley cause that depression? Did it solidify it? Maybe. But we have two evidences here of Fordney and Dingley of massive economic growth after tariffs. We got one evidence of massive depression, and the depression, of course, started in 1929 before Smoot-Hawley even happened. And even that, Smoot-Hawley was less than Dingley and McKinley by far. All right, so now we got the wars. All right, so obviously we're the only game in town until about 1965, 1970. Here's when stupid Nixon met with China. And look at our tariff rate growing from 1975 all the way down here. What has our GDP done over this time? What has our GDP done? And it cracks me up because basically since 1990 to today, our GDP has been substandard. I don't think we've had 3% that much at all. And not having a 3% GDP, real GDP, is what everyone in the Wall Street Journal screams bloody murder about. Oh, you got to have a 3% GDP. But they'll never say, well, could it be attributed to the fact that we have the lowest tariffs we've ever had during this time? Low tariffs, low GDP. High tariffs, high GDP. High tariffs, low GDP. But you can see where the evidence lays is on the pro-tariff side for economic growth. There's just no two ways around that. There's just not, dude. These guys, it's like I don't get it. It's ignorance. I don't think I just think it's a lie by omission, not commission. Anyway, so the point being is you cannot sit there and say, if you're the Wall Street Journal, Thomas DiLorenzo, all these other guys, oh, low tariffs help economic growth, and then turn around in the next editorial say we've had too low economic growth. And what they're going to say, of course, they'll say because there's too much government regulation. Maybe. That could well be. Could be too much government regulation. But let's try. We haven't had high tariffs for a long ass time. And when we did have high tariffs, we had more than ample evidence that high tariffs led to economic growth. So maybe we try lowering the regulation. I get that. The red tape, 100%. I'm all about that. But why don't we try something else too, just to see if both these things can work? Maybe the high tariffs will help us with our industry, especially critical industry, steel making. This is scary to me. Steel making. We're going to rely on Japan. I just read, some guy had written this today, or yesterday I read, who was that? I can't remember all the stuff I read. I wish I would. He said right now, Japan, 100%, the result of tariffs for the U.S. will have very, very effective positivity for our nation, 100%. The debt clock is completely fake. Absolutely. Yep. Tariffs are a negotiating tool, 100%, man. That's all there is to it, to set to our advantage. Anyways, the point being is, I read I used to, I don't read it so much anymore, but they've been griping for decades. Right-wing economists, the GDP is too low, GDP is too low, GDP is too low. Thus, it's because of government crowding out the government, the debt to GDP is crowding out, private growth and all that. I'm like, well, the S&P 500 isn't recognizing that. I don't know. The S&P 500 has gone crazy since the 1980s. So I don't know if we're going to say private investment is sucking wind because of the debt to GDP. Well, not in the S&P 500, that's for sure. But anyway, they also say, well, the government regulation is stymining, whatever that word is, economic growth output as well. And maybe there might be some truth to that. I said, no, I get that. What I'm saying. I mean, I 100% agree with that to some extent. But how about something else there, Wall Street Journal? How about since we've had this massive free trade, our economic growth is going south? In fact, you can almost see, it's almost like literally a correlation, like dollar for dollar, 100% correlation, I should say, of the massive free trade we've had since the 1970s and median wages stagnating, growth stagnating. And if you want to say that's attributed to not having enough kids and all that, well, that's simply not true. In the 1970s and 1980s, we still had a pretty significant growing population. So the free trade, the outsourcing, all this, the median wage has stagnated. It was kept up with inflation. That's just it. It's just barely kept up with inflation. S&P 500 as a whole has gone up quite high. But the facts are the median wage has not, and the GDP growth has not. The only thing that's grown is the financiers on hedge funds and Wall Street. That's it. Everything else hasn't done that well. No, it's done okay. I mean, I'll take America any day over the weekend, other place. Yeah, the globalists. Yep. Free trade was for the globalists, 100%. They've done incredibly well. Incredibly well. And so I remember, in 50 years ago in Japan, the number of 20-year-old children, all right, or 20-year-old people, I should say, 20-year-old people, there is twice as many 20-year-olds in Japan 50 years ago as there are today. Let that sink in. Japan had 2 20-year-olds 50 years ago for every 1 20-year-old they have now. In South Korea, in 2 generations, there's going to be 8 grandparents for every grandkid. 8-to-1 grandparent to grandkid ratio in South Korea. India has just barely enough replacement rate. So each woman is supposed to have 2.1 children to have the replacement rate, not even a growing population rate, just replacement rate. India has the women's about 2.14, and it's dropping like this. India is growing, basically keeping up with the population, but they're not even growing that much going forward. China replacement rate is like 1.04 per woman. And again, you have to have 2.1 just to maintain your population. I think the U.S. is like 1.65. Women don't want kids anymore. It's 100% true. It's absolutely true. And this is happening all over the world. Africa is even dropping. You see what I'm saying? Africa is even dropping. But it's happening all over the world. It's a demographic winter is coming. And so the issue here is we're going to rely. China as a world economic power it will be slowly gone here in about probably 50 to 100 years. You think they don't know that? You think they don't have a lot of angry young men who can't find women, who are being regulated to death and aren't? You think the commies don't know? You think they're going to deal with us in due diligence? I mean, and we scratch our back, you scratch yours. No. Hey, right on. There goes. Yeah, Kirk's got his 4th kid. Yeah, and Reagan also had 100% tariff on Japanese semiconductors to protect the American semiconductor industry. Reagan knew about tariffs, how effective it could be. So all these idiots, I'm a Republican, I don't like tariffs, but I like Reagan. Fun guy's got a cat. I don't think anyone's surprised by that, actually. Fun guy's got a cat. I bet Fun guy's got like 5 cats. I bet one's taking a piss on him right now. Anyway, so the point being is we have this massive demographic collapse. A lot of young, angry men out there in China. China, the Communist Party, what do they want? What's a good way to get everybody to focus not on someone? It's called rally around the flag. Let's spark a war. That way they don't come after us. Kind of what happened in 9/11, actually, when you think about it, because there was a lot of dissatisfied people with George W. Bush on the right, like I was. I was still pissed about Waco. Ruby Ridge, and Oklahoma City. I said, something's going on here, man. I don't know what's going on, but Waco, Ruby Ridge, Oklahoma City. Yeah, there's more to this story than being the eye. And then there's Penelope. Well, because we have brains, Penelope. People bring their brains and they can create things that allow for other people to live luxurious lives. Just a fact. And for an economic growth, you need a growing population if you want economic growth. Now, I think we can argue some of the ways we look at GDP as a way for economic growth. But Jeremy Grantham, that's the guy who written that. Jeremy Grantham, big lip. Penelope, you love Jeremy Grantham. Big lip, dude. He's like, the world's falling apart because climate change. But he recognized it right there. He said, the economic growth in Japan, China, South Korea, India, this is not good. It's a bad place to be. And then we're going to say, so now we got a predominantly Muslim group of people that are growing like crazy. Not like crazy anymore, slowing down. You got Christians that are so scared of their own shadow. You see what I'm saying? And then you got the Southeast Asian, China and whatnot, India. They're slowly stagnating in their population. China, South Korea, Vietnam, all these places are not have enough kids. You see what I'm saying? So now you have a population decline. That's going to cause some serious problems, man. Serious problems. And so one of the things we have to do, of course, and one of the reasons we have a population decline in the United States is because it's so damn expensive. We don't have enough salary per person to be able to generate the income they need to raise a family. So another reason tariffs are good is because we bring these good paying jobs back to the United States. This isn't difficult. Does it make prices maybe a little bit more expensive? It could. Absolutely. I don't think anyone would say, hey, if you're going to hire American labor, you're going to have more wages to pay. And to make a profit, you'll have to raise your prices. I don't think anyone inherently is going to say that's not true. But it's true for the sustainability of the United States. If we don't have these jobs back and we're relying on China, and China's becoming ever and ever more of a cesspool because they don't have enough women per men, dude, we're in a world of hurt, man. And I'm not doomsday. I got 4 kids myself, Kirk. I mean, you can't have 4 kids if you're doomed. I'm absolutely optimistic. But you got to call a spade a spade. Right now, we are trading on the goodwill of a lot of our economic, if not military enemies. When that goodwill subsides because they're dealing with their own internal chaos, again, rally around the flag. We'll create war, essentially, be it however you want to do it. And that way we'll draft people, the whole thing. I can see that a mile away. And as such, we better put some damn tariffs on these things. Tariffs on China in particular. If you don't want to do tariffs on Canada, maple syrup, I don't care. But it's a good negotiating point, and everybody knows this. And Thomas DiLorenzo and these other guys, I was reading some other guys, like, dude, who was it? I forgot. It's like, why do you guys just, you completely lie about what happened in the 1890s? You completely do. I don't get, it's almost like it's not taught in economics that it's like almost like if you have a degree in economics, a PhD even, you have to say tariffs are bad. It's almost like if you're going to go to pharmacy school, you have to say vaccines are good, always good, forever will be good, and never were bad. You have to say freaking Jonas Salk and the other guy, I forgot his name, saved us from polio, would all be in a freaking iron lung. And yet, and if you don't say that, we're never going to give you any other reading to look at. It's crazy, man. Chinese are importing brides from Malaysia, Russia. Interesting. Housing costs are outrageous. Our kids can't afford. 100%. I'm not convinced that the hedge fund. This is an issue because some guy said this on X, some liberal. The hedge funds own like 41% of. I was like, I don't believe that. I said, let me see show me the link to it, and he showed the link. I said, well, this had nothing to do with the argument. Like the link. I was like, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see some studies that say. This is true. Hey, look at a lot of Western women are not worth marrying. Too many are feminists. Hey, thanks for the money, Jeremy. I don't know. A lot of Western women say a lot of Western men aren't worth marrying too, though, Jeremy. That goes both ways. Lots of young men would rather be a waitress for less than steal working for more. Lots of young men would rather be a waitress for less than steal working for more. I'm not so sure about that. I don't know if I agree with that, William. I think I think the days of young men not working hard are coming to an end because there's not that many going to college. Let's just put it that way. Less and less young men are going to college. Seems to me the most elite educators, even in finances, on 100%, dude. That's just if you're in finance, you got to default to being a left winger. It's crazy. Bad side and crack down on immigration. We can't get these foreign women. Let's keep the chicks. Let's keep the chicks for cute humor. We'll get rid of the dudes, keep the chicks. Remember, by the way, my friends, it's a invading army if it's all men coming into your shores. It's an escaping refugee if it's mostly women coming to your shores. All right. So who do you think is coming to our shores? Mostly men or women? It's mostly men. That's an invading army. If it's truly a fleeing refugee, the women and children would be first. And you're not seeing that. You're seeing mostly men coming and the women and children being left back. Penelope says, if men gave birth, there'd be an abortion clinic on every corner. Men gave birth, there'd be an abortion clinic. Okay, I don't get that. I think, Penelope, who do you think is the biggest advocates for abortion? You think it's women? You crazy? Come on. Let's go. Anyway, I'd like to see the study about hedge funds. I'm not saying they don't. There's Scott. I would just like to see the study that hedge funds have a significant stake in home ownership. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I'd like to see that because, again, some guy posted that and he said, "Oh, you're an idiot." And I said, "No, I just want to see it." Because I posted the link. I said, "But you obviously didn't read your article. It had nothing to do about freaking hedge funds owning this. It didn't." Search Bing. Wall Street has purchased hundreds of thousands of homes. Again, hundreds of thousands in terms of how many homes are out there. I mean, again, I'm not discounting. I just like it's just an old feminist saying. Yeah, well, old feminist sayings. I need a man like a fish needs a bike. I get you, Penelope. Old feminists are probably the most cranky people ever in history. I don't know, actually. Some of these old feminists are coming strong, like the chick who wrote Harry Potter. That chick's freaking crushing. What's her name? J.K. Rowling? Dude, what a freaking hero. Talk about brave. Dude, J.K. Rowling, a crazy old feminist, and she's crushing it. Big fan. So here's 10% or less of single homes are owned by investors, mostly individuals. Yeah, see, that's what I think, too. I think 100%. I think that's right. I think most of single-family homes are by investors or mom and pops who got usually 3 or 4 units. At least that's some of the stuff I've seen. Not you okay, puppy? I'm not discounting that. I could be wrong, but I have seen that. Like, oh, they're owned by investors. Who's the investor? Well, a guy owns 3 or 4 places, and that because I got clients who own 3 or 4 places all of the time. That's not Wall Street. I think what Scott's scam is that notice how Scott from Texas is no longer here when we called him out for his craziness. And if you're new here, Scott from Texas challenged me on something, and we quickly just slapped him a couple times across the face. We say, apologize. I didn't ban him or anything. It's just Scott from Texas, but he went very quiet when he was called out on his crazy talk. I forgot what he said. It was all in fun, but I think I would not be surprised if if a sizable portion of apartment buildings are owned by hedge funds. I don't think it's single family homes. I just don't. I don't. But I could be wrong. I think most single family homes are owned by the owner occupied homes and owned by just mom and pop with a couple rentals. Here's Mark Kent. All right, who's Mark Kent, man? Never seen this guy around. My personal most Muslims eventually assimilate. Well, that's what we've been told, Mark Kent. I think as the bigger the population, the less required to assimilate. And at some point, there's a tipping point where assimilation is not even part of the structure. I think that's what's going to happen. I think they assimilate because we've had evidence of assimilation when they're the vast minorities. And then when I say they are a minority, not a vast minority, they slowly assimilate 100%. And then we can say, hey, that's great. They're here to assimilate. But then slowly but surely that starts changing. You see what I'm saying? And that's where I think we're going. What we're seeing in Europe right now is what's happening, and the same thing will happen here. I think. I absolutely could be wrong, but I tell you, man, I think that's. I don't want to say it's a strategy. I just think inherently it kind of makes sense. If I was a Muslim, and there's not very many Muslims, I'd assimilate. Then as more and more Muslims came, I'd less assimilate. And then as more and more Muslims came, and slowly but surely the Christians were being so scared of their shadows, they're allowing us to be more and more dominant. I would not assimilate. I would start then making them assimilate with me as a conquering army without firearms. What's happening in Europe right now? Crazy. I banned two people. I banned two. Who did I ban? I banned two people the other day. It was SSG Gunny, because he was just like, I think he, look, I don't know him, but my observation, I think he might have been a drinker, because he would say some stuff that's way over the top. And then he would calm down. I remember I was like, what? It's weird, man. And and then finally he'd start pissing me. I was like, dude, I can't take it anymore. Like, it's weird. Like, he would say some stuff. I was like, that's really extreme, and really not good. That's bad. And I let him hang around. I called him out a couple of times. Said, "You okay there, man?" And then he would kind of pipe down a little bit for a little bit. And then it's just very volatile. And being an alcoholic myself and raised by alcoholics, that volatility is a sure sign of alcoholism with 100%. I don't know if the guy is or not. I have no idea. But I was like, yeah. And then he just said, like, something's just, was making fun of me. I was like, I'm not going to let you make fun of me on my channel. I mean, stupid. Then who did I ban the other guy too? It wasn't Thomas Moshier, because he said some good stuff. It wasn't the one guy, Dan Lopez, wasn't him. I forgot who the other guy was, but I banned two people. Because at some point, just like, this personal attacks is stupid. I just don't want to hear it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but don't you attack people? I don't think I do. And if I do, whatever. I thought Penelope was a bot for the longest time. I'm still not convinced she's not. But if she's a bot, she's doing pretty good. But I don't need the algorithm. We always want comments for the algorithm. I don't want to deal with idiots. I'm sorry. If you're going to be that personal, because I disagree with you, this is to you, Penelope, where you're just being volatile and just angry. This life's too short. Like, come on. Because I actually and I believe it or not, I've learned from people in comments a lot. Here's Born Again Bride. So, like, for instance, I've said this story a billion times. Born Again Bride said to me about a year ago, maybe a year and a half, "You read a lot, you're educated, why don't you read the Bible?" And I said, I was being called out by the Born Again Bride because I hadn't looked at the Bible much. And I read the Bible, the whole thing from front to back over the course of the last year. And it was all because of her, this chick right here, Born Again Bride. I remember buying first home at 9.75 mortgage interest rate at a moonlight and rent rooms to afford it. I just hope you're moonlighting in a good way there, Born Again Bride. Because, yeah, you look like a lady who could moonlight, if you know what I'm saying. You're cute. You can see Born Again Bride moonlighting, you know what I'm saying? Maybe that's why she's now born again, because she moonlighted in bad ways, huh? It was let's see. Well, that's the problem. If we're going to be a nation of renters, that's where everything falls apart. I mean, the whole point about America is that 2/3 of Americans own their own home and take pride in ownership. You see what I'm saying? Never mind all the equity we got built up in it. And if you're a renter, that's European stuff, and we don't want to be European. Crazy old feminists are providing all the statistics on single home ownership. I don't get it. Oh, dude, alcohol is a toxic to the mind, but 100%, dude. And I'm telling you, the volatility on some of these guys is just like, yeah, there's something not right. Because I didn't ban Dan Lopez, but it's SS Gunny. I did. It wasn't Dan Lopez. Who was it? Did I ban Dan? I don't think I banned Dan Lopez. It wasn't him. Yeah, I can't remember. No, I saw Dan Lopez recently. Okay. You moonlight as a physician. Yeah, a physician, right? Showing up in your nurse's outfit, were you? I'm just goofing you. Reading you can't read. You just got to read a couple of chapters. I mean, literally, don't. I just said I'm going to give myself a year to read this. So I read 1 or 2 chapters a day. That's it. That's all you can do. But what I do, and this is where I think I got a more, what's the word I'm looking for? A better exposure to the Bible as a whole. Is I would look up the references to other parts of the Bible. So you have like their let's say see John 13, whatever it was, you know what I'm saying? And then I look at, because a lot of, now it's going to take a lot of people off, especially on Easter night, but a lot of what people use for various arguments in the Bible, and especially with Paul and some of the New Testament, if you actually look at what they're referring to back in the Old Testament, it doesn't jive the way they're making the argument. It's actually kind of sad. It ticked me off because it's like, no, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but let's just use some for Paul. They'll say Paul said this, yeah, and then in Paul be referencing something in Isaiah or something like that, or even worse, to be representing something in some of the Psalms, and you're like, all right, and then you look at the entirety of that paragraph from which Paul's referencing in Isaiah, you're like, that's not at all what your argument regarding what Paul is saying at all. If the argument is based on what he's referencing in the Isaiah or the Psalm, it's just not. It's not good. I'm telling you, I was dumbstruck how many times people would say, "Oh, you're misinterpreting it." I was like, "Okay." And I said, "Well, I'm just literally using what Paul is referencing in Isaiah or Psalms to validate what he's saying here, and what you're saying doesn't jive. It just does not." And it happens all the time. It's really it's problematic because it's like they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes to see the Bible in a certain way, and I don't think you should go in there trying to see the Bible in a certain way. I don't. Anyway, I was. Let's just put it this way: I've been very disappointed in particularly right-wing Christians. A lot of this in this my exercise in reading the Bible, because I expected that they of all people would have a better grasp of it. Not the prosperity Bible people, and not the Jesus a hippie Bible people, and is quite disappointing. Especially in the promotion of Israel. That's one of the things. There's other things I don't want to talk about here because people get mad, but the promotion of Israel is not anywhere near like we got to defend what is. It's just not biblical. I don't care what anybody says. We're not. The Bible does not say to support of Israel what we're doing. It just does not. And the whole Judeo-Christian thing, it's just we just lost ourselves when we started taking on this dual religion of we're born of Jews, and we got to be at one with the Jews. And I'm not saying go punch people in the face, but man, it just look at the Old Testament particularly. You're not supposed to marry outside not your race, but outside your role. It's God could not be clearer. You see what I'm saying? And just for some reason, Christians have just been like, it's just frustrating. But that's okay. That's okay. And God. Well, people say I'm not Bible-based, born again bride. They'll say that, and because I don't quite see it the way they do. Dude, I completely disagree here. You respect Catholics because they really read the Bible. I completely disagree on that. Completely disagree. I don't think Catholics read the Bible at all. That's why me as raised Catholic, I was so eager, not eager, I was so willing to be taken into some of the Presbyterian stuff. I was like, wow, I didn't know this. You know what I'm saying? Hell, I didn't even know there's 66 Bible books in the Catholic, 73 books in the Catholic Bible, 66 in the Protestant Bible. I didn't know that. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just didn't. The Catholics don't read the Bible, at least in my experience as a Catholic, and that's why we're so easily swayed by hardcore evangelical, because we're hearing things we never heard before, or they're easily swayed by atheists, because Catholicism let the priests do all the work. And that's a problem. At least, again, this is just my experience of Catholicism. Let the priest do all the work. You just listen to him, he says, and move on to your day. That's bad. That's bad Christianity. That's bad. That's why so many Catholics fall away, because they've never had to take the time to actually learn their faith. They just never had. And then when they hear an argument against the faith, they're like, "Oh, I didn't. Well, if that's purgatory's not in the Bible. I always thought it was. So purgatory's not in the Bible. What else have I been misled on?" And then next thing you know, they're listening to Bart Ehrman, and I like Bart Ehrman. What I'm saying, but next thing you know, they're like, "Oh man, well Bart Ehrman's pretty smart." Well, Bart Ehrman doesn't know everything either. You see what I'm saying? But it's just not good. But at the end of the day, we're gonna do what God's gonna do. I mean, all we can do is do us, and just practice the Great Commission. But now we'll end here. I do want to show you something here, because this is something that bothers me to no degree. I cannot. We're gonna look at the Great Commission here real quick, So it's Matthew 28. All right. So let's take a look at the Great Commission. All right. Just looking up on. Okay, I want that. Hold on a second. Let me find the. We're going to look at Bible Gateway. We're going to look at NIV, New International Version on the Great Commission. Actually, my man says here, Mark Kent. A few years back, I considered buying some farmland in very rural Ohio. I checked online to see the neighbors were the farm next door had been purchased by a Muslim cemetery or association. Did you hear that the Muslims bought a church in Dallas, and they're converting that to a mosque, and they're bringing a guy has some unindicted conspirator for the 1993 bombings to raise money for it. And he's saying explicitly what the intentions are. Now, look, you can say he's just one of a minority, and I completely agree with that. If all Muslims are terrorists, we'd all be dead. I don't believe that at all. That the vast majority of it's like the idea that Muslims, no, not in the least. I think the vast majority of Muslims are actually righteous people, and they're doing good by their faith and by their family, 100%. The question is, though, are they going to do good by the country? And I just don't know that to be true, because if you look at what's going on in Europe, they're remaking Europe in their own vision, which is inherently anti-Christian. And to pretend that is not happening is to just be putting your head in the sand and ignoring what the hell's going on. So will the Muslims that come to America be different? I don't know. But I do know the Christians, we better freaking make up our mind, because at some point we won't be able to have a say in this if the way things are going. Oh, you sound like you're an Islamophobe. Not in the least. I think Muslims are freaking wonderful people. I don't want to be in a Muslim country. I don't. I want to be in a Christian country. I don't want to be in a Jewish country. I don't want to be in an atheist country. I don't want to be in a Hindu country. I want to be in a Christian country. And if that makes me anything, I don't care. It's just the way I am, because I believe that Jesus not only suffered and died on a cross, but he rose again from the dead, as he said he was going to. And then the very same people who denied him when he was going to his torment and execution somehow got the gumption to take full ownership of him, and they themselves are mercilessly killed. Kind of crazy. The same people said, I don't know that guy. A few days later, oh yeah, no, we're all about Jesus. So much so that we're going to die for him, even though just a couple days earlier, I don't know that. Something crazy about that. Yeah, I completely take your faith out of the religion and give it to God. 100%. I completely agree with that. Completely agree. All right. So anyway, let's just read this real quick on Matthew 28, the Great Commission. Oops, right here. Because I think there's a lot. Tragically, most Native European, 100%, I completely agree. Yeah, and so they had no soul to fight, and that's a good thing about Americans is we do. Look, we got the best of the Scots, we got the best of the Irish, we got the best of the Germans. Yeah, we got the Nazi Germans, Werner von Braun from NASA. We got Operation Paperclip for a reason. But we got the best and the brightest of many different countries and cultures. It's fantastic, 100%. And, Americans aren't just going to fall over head over heels. Okay, whatever. It's just not like that in America, because the people we got in America are mostly legends out here to kick ass and take names. We're not just going to lay down, because we are the last beacon of hope in a free world. No other way around. And that's what's so disappointing about COVID. Hey, Crowley McGee. Hey, no. All right, so let's read this. Finn. Hey, so here's a Great Commission. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, this is the important part. All right. Jesus came to them and said, all authority on heaven and earth has been given to me. But everyone wants to pretend the Great Commission doesn't say that. They just go right here to Matthew 28:19. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptize them in them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. But they always overlook. Jesus came to them and said, all authority on heaven and earth has been given to me. Very weird how they forget that part. That's a big deal, because Jesus says that time and again in his words. God is greater than I. Very crazy. Very crazy. So make it what as you will. But when people cite the Great Commission and they only cite Matthew 28:19 without going to Matthew 28:18, they're leaving something pretty significant out that a lot of Christians are ignorant of, and ignorance will ultimately lead them down to atheism, or at least being agnostic. Jesus told me to move my 401k to cash. Jesus said, you should buy tech stocks. That's fine. All right, so let's say one last prayer for Easter time. And Heavenly Father, we just thank you for friends here. We just pray for those we just pray for all the families out there who are struggling financially right now. We just pray for them, Lord. Just bless them, please. We pray you bless them with your heart and soul, as we know you do. We pray that they turn to you in all times of sadness, of shame, of worry, because at the end of the day, you win. You told us that explicitly in your book. You win, and there's no alternative than to bow down before you and your son Jesus and worship you as the one true living God and creator of all things. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so I got to get out of here, man. At the end of the day, Peter denied Jesus, not once, not twice, but thrice. And then Peter later was murdered in pure agony, hung upside down because of his love of Jesus. Something crazy about that. Something crazy. God bless. We'll see you guys. Appreciate it. Happy Easter.